Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. I hope you've been learning a lot on zero trust from the past sessions. Today, I'll be discussing about insider threats and attacks since it has become a major concern for organizations of late, and it has only increased ever since the onset of the pandemic because of remote work and hybrid work. Traditional perimeter based security approaches are no longer adequate as the network perimeter is being redefined. So, a zero trust strategy is the need of the hour as it helps you keep up with the changing cybersecurity landscape. So, today we'll discuss on how you can prevent insider threats and attacks by adopting a zero trust architecture, since zero trust has now become a security mandate for organizations. We'll also take a look at how integrating a SIEM solution with a zero trust architecture can help you address the human element in cybersecurity to prevent insider threats. Now, almost half of all data breaches have an insider element to them. Almost 60%, 67% of accidental insider threats still originate from phishing attacks. And it's more difficult to identify when compared to external threats and attacks because traditional security solutions are majorly focused on detecting and preventing suspicious activity that originates outside the network. Now, since insiders have legitimate access to the network's resources, it becomes extremely difficult to differentiate between what's legitimate and what's dangerous. The rate of insider attacks have only gone up ever since the onset of the pandemic, and organizations are finding it very difficult to monitor their network with employees scattered all across the globe. This ultimately has led to an increased number of bad actors trying to exploit this vulnerability or the situation to gain entry into the network, cause data breaches, and other attacks. What makes it even more scary is that these can be as simple as just phishing or social engineering attacks. All of this points to one basic observation that humans are the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain. And as we all know, a cybersecurity solution is only as strong as its weakest link. But this is one of the most easily ignored factors when it comes to deploying a cybersecurity framework. And let's face the fact that humans are fallible and prone to making mistakes, and our passwords are not always complex. Most of us find it easier to set passwords that are easier for us to remember and for attackers to guess. And the same can be said for practicing good cyber hygiene techniques because at the end of the day, most people tend to skip these simple steps like setting up MFA or updating their login credentials regularly. And this is precisely what attackers exploit when they launch phishing scams or social engineering attacks or when an employee's credentials are compromised. Now, while attackers exploit human imperfection or carelessness to launch their attacks, it is equally necessary for cybersecurity professionals like us to factor in the human element while building these cybersecurity frameworks. So, we'll take a look at two different components that can help us achieve this. The first is zero trust, which will help in the prevention of threats, and the second is a security information and event management solution, which is a SIM solution. It will help in the detection of threats and to act on them once they're detected. And by integrating these two, will effectively be able to address the human element in cybersecurity. So, precisely what we're doing is we're breaking zero trust into two different forms, which is authentication and then monitoring those same people who just got authenticated and they have access over the network. So all I'm trying to say is that it just doesn't end with authentication. You have to continuously monitor user behavior or entity behavior to actually deploy a successful zero trust architecture. Now, the fundamental principle of zero trust is to never trust and always verify. I'm sure all of us have heard of it. In a zero trust approach, every user, every device or application, and the network itself is assumed to be hostile and is authenticated before establishing trust. Since no user or entity is trusted even while they're within the network. A zero trust strategy can help you prevent insider threats to a great extent. Now, we'll take a look at some of the basic zero trust strategies and techniques. The first and foremost being microsegmentation, which is essentially dividing the network into smaller and more manageable zones. And this can prevent lateral movement within the network. It also reduces the attack surface. Now, continuous monitoring is an important aspect of a zero trust architecture since it helps you detect any malicious activity. You can take immediate action to limit the damage, and the very fundamental or the core principle of zero trust lies in least privilege access. So, the principle of least privilege ensures that each user is given access only to the data that's absolutely necessary for performing a specific task. That is, not everyone within the network is given access to everything. So, apart from all of this, employing or deploying a MFA will provide an additional layer of authentication, and it will make sure that only legitimate users are granted access. And MFA combined with single sign on ensures an additional layer of security by reducing the attack surface. So, IAM is obviously at the core of any zero trust architecture, and authentication and authorization play key roles in the IAM process, and it'll also help you enforce zero trust. So, we at Manage Engine, we have an IAM solution 8360 that focuses on managing and securing user identities across your organization. It facilitates identity governance, and it also ensures regulatory compliance. 8360 can actually help you perform a lot of IAM tasks such as user provisioning, deprovisioning, modification, or self service password management, or adaptive authentication, change monitoring, auditing, reporting, and it has a lot of features which we can use to secure the identities of your organization. Now, we'll take a look at how 8360's capabilities align with zero trust strategies. Since authentication is a fundamental step towards establishing zero trust, 8360 uses identity analytics tools to implement contextual risk based authentication. It also facilitates adaptive authentication, and you can choose from a wide range of authentication methods such as biometrics or push notifications or email verification, SMS verification, and there are a lot of authentication methods. Multi-factor authentication is actually very important, and it's a important component to establish a zero trust architecture since it provides an additional layer of authentication. Combinations of MFA generally will include something that the user knows, which can be like a password, something that the user has, it can be a device or a key card, and something that the user is, like biometrics or fingerprints or retina verification. So when MFA is combined with SSO, you get an additional layer of security because the attack surface is minimized, and it'll also help reduce friction, and it'll increase productivity. Like we discussed earlier, IAM is at the core of any zero trust architecture, and which is why it's important to streamline your IAM processes with identity lifecycle management. Now, in an organization with thousands of employees, it's practically impossible to manage all the identities in the network manually. So manually managing IAM tasks can also, get you into having a lot of errors or redundancies that are generally introduced by humans. Now, 8360 can actually help you to ramp up your identity management lifecycle by automating these IAM tasks such as user provisioning, modification, and it'll also provide just the right level of access to your employees and enforce the policy of least privilege to reduce risks, and it'll also ensure compliance. Now, since traditional network perimeters are no longer relevant with the rapid adoption of cloud computing and work from anywhere trends, so organizations are actually migrating to the cloud a lot, and therefore, IAM solutions also need to be able to cater to organizations that work on an on-premise infrastructure, the cloud, or both, basically a hybrid infrastructure as well. So 8360 does just this by ensuring hybrid IAM with a cloud-based zero trust network access at its core. So organizations can centrally manage both their on-premise and cloud identities and can also govern access privileges to their resources. It can help organization build a very effective hybrid identity management program by automating IAM tasks such as identity lifecycle management, provide adaptive authentication methods and audit reports, and to help ensure compliance. Besides all these, 8360 also leverages user behavior analytics to provide intelligent threat alerts, which will help you to address the human element in cybersecurity, as I mentioned earlier. Now we'll move on to the next part, which is SIM. So, zero trust solutions are mainly focused on preventing threats by making sure that no user or entity is trusted. But SIM solutions go one step ahead. They are focused on detecting threats and handling these threats once they're detected. So, together, these two can ensure that your network doesn't face any insider threats and immediately notifies you in case any suspicious activity is detected. So, we'll take a look at some of the basic functionalities that any SIM solution should have. Even at Manage Engine, we have an unified SIM solution. It's called Log 360. It has capabilities which can help you address the human element. It has integrated DLP and CASB capabilities that will help you detect or investigate and respond to security threats. So Log 360 is capable of collecting log and event data from more than 750 types of network sources such as Active Directory, workstations, databases, servers, applications, and a lot of other sources across the network. It will help you proactively secure through UEBA. It performs real time event correlation. It integrates with SOAR capabilities, and it also has CASB integrated capabilities. So all of these go a long way in preventing and managing insider threats. I'll probably discuss some of Log 360's functionalities in detail. The most important function of a SIM solution is to collect and monitor data. So Log 360 does this by collecting and monitoring log data from different sources across the network, such as users or applications, firewalls, VPNs, and so on. The continuous monitoring makes it possible to flag any suspicious activity in the network, and any changes made by privileged accounts are tracked since they have access to the most sensitive or critical data. And this will actually make sure that security incidents are tackled before they result in a data breach or other serious consequences. It also performs real-time change auditing and provides audit reports, so your IT administrator or your security administrator can just go through the audit reports and see what changes have been made and spot any malicious activity. UBA is one of the most important aspects of a SIM solution, user and entity behavior analytics. So Log 360 also provides a UBA solution that leverages machine learning techniques to build a baseline of normal human behavior. This is done by continuously monitoring the network. So whenever there is a deviation from this baseline, it's considered to be anomalous behavior. The IT admins are notified so that they can respond to the threat. Now, for example, an employee attempting to download a large amount of sensitive data outside of their normal working hours, probably this data is sensitive data or business critical data, and this will be considered as a potential threat, and the IT admin will take necessary actions to tackle it. Log 360 will also help in this case by using or analyzing this data. It'll use a score based risk assessment method to prioritize incident response to the threats. So basically, the UEBA solution will maintain a risk score for every single user or entity profile within the network. Every time an entity or a user deviates from the baseline of normal behavior, its risk score will increase. Now, the one with the highest risk score will be prioritized and investigated first. So, high risk events are handled first, and you can prevent a lot of potential data breaches. Log 360 also uses advanced threat analytics and built in threat intelligence capabilities. It can help you detect malicious sources which are trying to intrude into your network. For example, it can detect malicious domains or URLs or IPs that are trying to get access into your network. So, Log 360 will allow you to automate your incident response with easy to build workflows. This will ensure that you can quickly respond to the threat. It also performs reputation based scoring to figure out which threat possess the highest risk so that we can plan the incident response accordingly. Insider threats have become a major concern for organizations, and it's high time we worked towards preventing them from happening in the first place. Zero trust is now a basic security requirement to prevent cyber attacks, and we've discussed earlier humans are the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain, and the best way to prevent attacks that originate from humans, like insider threats, would be to take the human element into consideration by leveraging the predictability of human behavior. To do this, you need to integrate SIEM and UEBA into your zero trust strategy. But the first step will always be having a strong authentication mechanism in place. After that, you can continuously monitor your zero trust environment using SIEM and UEBA. This will give you a holistic approach to cybersecurity. And by doing this, you'll be able to keep a check on activity that goes on within the network and also prevent insider attacks to a large extent. Thank you so much for joining today. And if you want to discuss about the solutions mentioned in the webinar, which is Log 360 and 8360, please hit me up on my email ID. I would love to give you a free demo or discuss anything that you probably would want to tackle with, or a security concern that you might have. I would love to get on a call with you and help you out. So thank you again. And all of you have been a very lovely audience. Thank you so much.